Hello, everyone, and welcome to Torah Saturday. This every week we get together, we look at a section of this week's Torah Parsha or Torah portion. We use a source sheet that I create on Torah Tuesday. Those videos are also available. The thing about Torah study and the thing about the Jewish people is we were a people of lifelong learning. And I know sometimes people feel like they don't, quote, know enough to participate in Torah study. And the most important thing to bring is just your life experience. And then we read these texts, we interpret them, and we try to find meaning for us in a very personal way. And we can then look at how our sages and people in the past, going back thousands of years, looked at these texts and found meaning. And our voice is just as important as theirs in what I call the world's oldest book club. So we'll begin with the prayer of the blessing for Torah study. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kidshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah. Blessed are you, Divine One, who has given us this opportunity to immerse ourselves in the exploration of Torah. Okay, I shared the source sheet for this week in the chat. I will also bring it up as a share. This week's Torah portion is called Terumah, which means offerings or gifts. So it starts out, we are still at Mount Sinai, and we had just gotten a bunch of laws in the last portion and Mishpatim that we talked about. And so this next portion, it talks about this idea of God says to Moses, tell the Israelite people to bring me gifts, and you shall accept gifts from me from every person whose heart is so moved. So um, I just want to start there and open it up for some discussion. What do you take from this idea? Gifts from every person whose heart is so moved. Yes, Annie.
What it actually reminds me of is what you were just saying about everyone has Torah commentary to contribute,
Yeah.
of everyone has valuable things to bring, even though there's such a wide variety.
Yes. Absolutely. Absolutely.
And I was thinking about the every person whose heart is so moved, and so it's not. This is not a commandment. This is a do what your heart tells you to do.
Yeah.
It's about love.
Yeah, that's right. These are gifts that are made for love. Hey, Ellen. Um,
Wait,
Here's the source sheet we're using, and I'll share it from time to time. So, yeah, this isn't like for example, we're commanded to give tzedakah, we're commanded to give charity money to support the poor. This is something different. This is if you're moved, if you want to be part of it, come make a contribution.
The way you said things just now, Rabbi Greg, the idea of a movement, something that comes together
Hmm.
kind of on its own accord, that's very meaningful to me.
Oh, yeah, thank you. Yeah, absolutely. It's, sometimes people like to be asked. People generally don't like being told what to do. But, when you ask people and they're moved and they participate, then everybody has buy-in. Everybody's a part of it.
Of course, this is tell people that God said to do this.
Right,
Uh,
that's true.
that
and when
certainly moves people faster, doesn't it?
when they actually implement it, this is the part before where they're saying what's going to happen. Then there's the golden calf, and then when they actually do it, they've just gone through something.
Indeed.
But
Indeed.
then we also have that part, right, where it said those two guys got incinerated because they made a strange fire instead of bringing an appropriate kind of gift. Sorry, you just made
There,
me think of that.
yeah, no, I mean, it's not like this is a blank check that everything is going to be okay. But as in this circumstance, there don't seem to be any conditions. Well, there are a little bit. He sort of then we skip a bunch of text which says, and these are the kind of things that are good to bring. It's kind of like the tabernacle registry, and I didn't list it, but it's various gold and beautiful yarns and things like that. Don't bring me your old schmata, the sand castle you made, those aren't. But it's things of beauty. And the idea is to make me a sanctuary uh, that I may dwell among them. And we talked about this last night, but just the idea is that we are going to be creating uh, a structure, but then this whole dwell among them, that was kind of the subject of last night. But what's interesting is then, like, right after this is someone want to read 25:9, please?
Exactly as I show you, the pattern of the tabernacle and the pattern of all its furnishings, so shall you make it.
Okay, so what do you, is that just kind of a throwaway line, or is there anything that might seem a little bit strange to you? This is God talking to Moses up on Mount Sinai. Um, what are
No,
what do
one
you
thing
know?
I'm feeling that there's an effort to do something in community. There's a
Mhm.
plan here. I want all to work together towards the plan. No showing off and no exerting power and no kind of
Mhm.
deep. Just act as a team and see what's possible. See if you can get it done.
Yeah, I love that. We can imagine that there's this kind of vision of teamwork that's behind all of this, and that makes a lot of sense.
I
So,
like that if you look at the breadth of the list of things, it's, someone could be paralyzed from the waist down and still contribute stuff. It doesn't require everyone to be at like max physical ability.
Hmm. Yeah. So it uses this word, yeah, there's a role for everybody to play. It's an interesting word that's used here, mare, that is kind of like to show or to see. And so what is Moses seeing there?
That makes me think of the immediate thought I had was of the Aborigines in Australia, who did a lot of pointillism.
Hmm.
And I always imagined once I got to Australia and saw some beach where the crabs had made decorations on, they make pattern on the beach with little balls of sand.
Hmm.
And it that came to mind to me because I imagined that the Aborigines got their idea for pointillism from the crabs on the sand.
Ah,
And so the pattern, as I show you, I was wondering where's God showing Moses a pattern? Where's this coming from?
I
yeah.
like
And
that.
so my thought went automatically to something in nature is got to be something that he was thinking he would show him.
That is one interpretations. The mystics had a different idea. Okay. So, would someone like to read this next paragraph here?
I can go.
Thank
I
you.
have already explained at length in Parshat Terumah how the tabernacle was a reenactment of the work of creation. In other words, a microcosm, that it served as man's rehabilitation for the damage to God's universe brought about by Adam's sin.
Okay, let's just pause there. Uh, Adam's sin, what's that all about? What is that referring to?
I'm guessing it's the apple.
Yeah. Yeah. So in the Garden of Eden, you know, Adam was told Adam ate this apple, et cetera, et cetera. And that here it seems like what was the impact of that, according to this mystical interpretation?
Damage to God's universe.
Yeah, that was like a huge sin, a huge rupture with God, and it in a real way caused damage to the universe. And so by building the tabernacle, they're arguing that this was redoing creation, a reenactment of creation, and humankind could make up for this sin. Okay, so please continue now, Neil.
We have also explained there was a parallel tabernacle in the celestial region. In the celestial regions, Aaron, as high priest, symbolized the rehabilitation of man who had become distant from God as a result of Adam's sin.
Okay, so let's pause there. What is saying there was a parallel tabernacle in the celestial regions?
I'm thinking of sort of Plato's ideals, that there's sort of this ideal tabernacle, or Plato had, there's an ideal of everything. There's an ideal cat and tree and whatever, but
Yeah.
this ideal perfect tabernacle in God's realm, the celestial realm, however you imagine it, and then we're creating a copy of it.
Yeah, so there's kind of an order to the universe that God envisions, and we're being invited to kind of try to attain a semblance of that order.
Right. So in the verse where it says, where the divine says, "Build this according to what I've shown you," the mystics, what do they think is happening? What is Moses seeing then up on Mount Sinai?
Okay, that leads us to think that Moses is being shown the ideal tabernacle.
Yeah, Moses is having this vision of the ideal tabernacle. I'm going to show you the celestial higher realm, and here is this kind of idealized version. So pay very close attention, and you can rebuild one for yourself. And throughout most of the parsha is these very detailed instructions. Make piece of wood that are this long, and at the end you fashion these loops, you put them together, and it kind of reads like it is more detail than IKEA gives for assembling their furniture. It is just, there are pegs and there are loops, and here's what all the materials are made. So it seems like there's something really important. I mean, is there any? I mean, I think this is kind of an interesting that sometimes, interpretation goes in these directions. And I think this is interesting also talking about chesed and loving kindness, but we'll just kind of leave off on that. But what about this question here? So this parallel structure in the mystical realm, is there anything that this can teach us today? Is this kind of a interesting historical artifact? Maybe some of you are into mysticism and believe this is the case. If we're not, though, is there something that, just as an analogy, that we might learn from this, that we might take into our world today?
I guess I think a lot about, is there a better way of being than, when I have too much anger or too much, too overwhelmed or
Mm,
too snarky or something, that perhaps, not thinking so much about a perfect tree or cat, but thinking more about a better way of being.
mm, yeah. So we don't just have to accept how we are today or how things are today, that there may be something better that's out there that we could and and I think the point you're getting to is, and then we can strive for that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, you can stretch that metaphor a little bit too. If I've got a bunch of things that I've got to get done, I'm really struggling with them and I'm pushing back and I'm getting defensive, stepping back and asking, what is it I'm hoping to accomplish and why? And how does it benefit others? And what can I let go of maybe in that process? And
Mm.
realize that, kind of dotting every I and crossing every T may not be as important as delivering something that has value.
Yeah, so what I'm hearing from you, Neil, and tell me if I'm understanding this correctly, is like if you get too caught up on the ideal, we got to exactly recreate the celestial version of whatever that I'm doing, that it doesn't do us any good, and it could be counterproductive.
Yeah, yeah, just trying to satisfy the checklist may not be as important as trying to understand why do these things matter and then doing the best I can.
Hmm. Yeah, cool. And any other thoughts on this, or should we move on? So this is just kind of our preamble, our introduction to the main event. And our next section I call Hammer Time. So someone please read the section from Exodus and then the one from Leviticus.
Exodus 25:18. Make 2 cherubim of gold. Make them of hammered work at the 2 ends of the cover. Leviticus 19:4.
So let me just pause you there. What it's talking about is there's a gold cover for the box that will contain the for the Ark of the Covenant. So there's this gold, and then there's these cherubim that kind of come out from that, and it gives a lot of description. Okay. And
Leviticus 19:4. Do not turn to idols or make molten gods for yourselves. I am the eternal, your God. I, the eternal, am your God.
thank you. Okay, and so it uses different words. Taaseh is in both places. Taaseh means you will make, or is to make, to do. But then we have miksha, which is a hammer. So you can make something that's hammered, but lo ta'asu, do not make molten things. Because you could think of these cherubim, they're like creatures, right? Made out of gold. So it's okay to make those, but don't make idols or molten things that you worship.
I
But
have a practical explanation.
yeah.
So the thing with molten and molds is that's how they mass produced idols.
Hmm.
But hammered sculptures, I mean, if it takes 5 minutes to pour a mold of something, it can take you 100 hours to make a hammered sculpture.
Yeah.
Good point.
So intent is certainly part of it, but then also the cherubim were serving God. They were of God,
Hmm.
right? So that's different than a molten idol of a hippo.
Right. Right. So there's a purpose that's with the cherubim, but also, Annie, you make a really good point about just you can mass produce molten things, but you can't mass produce something that's hammered. There's other historical pieces that go for this molten versus hammered. But like again, like for our modern world, like is there a lesson here? Does how you do something matter if what you get in the end sort of looks like, the same thing either way, or could be taken to have the same meaning either way?
Now I'm thinking about using artificial intelligence to write your paper for you or
Hmm.
to create a work of art versus
Hmm.
uh,
Good
being
example.
Yeah. Yeah. Marty, you look like you're percolating a little bit. Any
It,
thoughts here?
I don't even know if my mic is working. Can you hear me?
Yes, I
Yep.
can.
Uh, no thoughts at the moment. I'm enjoying the convo though.
Hmm. Yeah.
Uh, my son and I, who from time to time produced single T-shirts, tried to I I tried to get artificial intelligence to make a table with all that stuff that's listed that went into the Mishkan, and I got some pushback from ChatGPT about we do not deal with certain types of religious topics. So,
Hmm.
uh,
Cute. Very cute.
uh, so I'm not sure what that's all about. But I finally did get a picture, but we decided not to go ahead with the actual T-shirt. Anyway, that's all I have for now.
Okay.
Microsoft Designer is a lot more forgiving about that, for the record. I
Okay.
when I'm really tired because of how sick I am, but I want to create an image, I use AI sometimes because I
Okay.
just don't
So
have the energy right now.
so even in an Apple household, we can obtain that Microsoft.
It's just a website. Yeah.
Okay. I'll keep it in mind. Thank you.
Sorry to interrupt with that. But I thought Allison made a great point of AI really is just like pouring gold into a mold.
Hmm. Yeah.
but that but making the mold is a lot can be a lot of work. You can make a really um, generic hippo, or you can make a very interesting hippo.
Yeah. One thing I'm wondering is in ancient times, fire was viewed as a very powerful force, a
Mm.
force of like bringing something new into the universe, kind of a break with what's there now. And I wonder if some of that superstition wove its way in here, where if you bring something out of fire, maybe it's kind of out of the order of what already exists. But if you do something with your hands, that's within the order of what already exists.
Yeah. There's no although I wonder if there's something about creating it for spiritual purposes. Like there's no prohibition against using a mold to make a ladle or a plate or something like that. But for the spiritual realm, there's no other gods, there's no representations. It's really trying to say that things are to be done differently. Um,
Clarify what's holy
yeah,
versus
yeah.
And,
banal.
it's hard for us to really understand the whole idol worship paradigm because we're in this culture. Even with other religions, we don't experience it to the extent that it existed at the time that the Torah was written.
So people have tried, Neil Gaiman with his work American Gods, tried to show how media and how entertainment and how pop culture figures and others can start to attain some of those idolatrous characters if you become too devoted to them.
Yeah.
So there's still that tendency within humanity.
But it's more of a metaphor as opposed to it was a very strong reality at that
Mhm.
time that
Yeah.
you had. And yeah, I'm not a scholar of it.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, and somebody was mentioning, fire was sacred in these different religions, and the ancient religion before Islam of Persia was Zoroastrianism, which is a fire religion.
Hmm.
And part of Iranian resistance now is celebrating the Zoroastrian fire festivals,
Hmm.
even when the government kills people for doing it. So it just
I
reminded
didn't,
me of that.
yeah, that's interesting, Annie. I did not know that. And there's a lot. Um, a great example of how our life experience and our different knowledge kind of brings additional layers of meaning to all of us.
Because the Persians and the Jews lived together in relative peace for more than 1,000 years. So that was part of why I thought that you had the Jews and Zoroastrians living in the same place and getting along.
Yeah. Yeah. All right, let's go on to um, the main focus of what I thought we could talk about today. And that is, I'm hearing an echo. Are other people hearing that?
Yeah.
Yes.
It looks like it's Ellen's computer for
Is
some
it me? I'm too loud? I'll
Um,
make my volume softer. I'll bring down my volume and see if that helps.
Okay. All right, so
Or I'll just mute if it's still there.
Okay, thank you, Ellen. All right, so there's a lot of instructions about making stuff. There's the cover, there's the chair beam, there's the table. And then in 2531, could someone read 31 and 32, please? Out loud,
I'll do it.
preferably.
I'll do it. You shall make a lampstand of pure gold. The lampstand shall be made of hammered work. Its base and its shaft, its cups, calyxes, and petals shall be of one piece. 6 branches shall issue from its sides, 3 branches from one side of the lampstand, and 3 branches from the other side of the lampstand.
Okay. So does this sound familiar at all?
Well, it sounds like a 7-branch menorah to me.
Yeah. And in fact, the Hebrew word is menorah. Menorah. Yeah, so
Neil is now going to get our recreation of the menorah, the temple menorah from the Roman that the Romans sacked.
okay.
Very
Yeah.
pretty.
So here there's a base, there's 3 arms from each side, there's the cups at the top. We won't go into it today, but there's also in this same parsha a description, or maybe it's next week, but I think it's this week, of making oil from olives to burn in the lampstand. And so is there any significance to kind of the burning of the oil for this menorah? Does that remind you of anything?
You mean besides Hanukkah?
Yeah, no, Hanukkah. It was not a complicated question.
Or latkes. Well, you never know, right? A rabbi asks a question and you're like, is this a simple answer or a complicated answer?
And the simplest answer of
Well,
all,
there's always an opportunity to answer in a complicated way, but just in the simplest way, yeah. I mean, the whole Hanukkah miracle of the oil, of rededication of the temple, centered around the menorah, at least the miracle as it was related to, by the rabbi. And I didn't include that.
the absolute simplest explanation is it got dark. You wanted something that would burn without a lot of smoke and provide enough light to do your ritual observance.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, light is a good thing. What else do we think about when we think about the menorah? It's obviously something that we've all heard of. What sort of role does it play within Jewish society today?
Well, there's the idea of the eternal light that
Hmm.
we have.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, and the expression "bring light unto the world" is very popular in Judaism.
Hmm.
Um,
Eternal light.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you, Marty. Um,
Looking at Neil and Allison's menorah made me remember I have a photo from around the year 1900 of the inside of the synagogue that my great great grandfather was bar mitzvahed in Germany, and you can see the temple menorah in it.
hmm.
Um,
Yeah, they have that's
and it's similar to the one you guys have, but it's, like 4 feet tall or something.
yeah, there is an image I saw on the web. I didn't include it in the source sheet of from they did archaeology of a fourth or sixth century synagogue, which had a picture of the menorah on the wall. So this is a huge symbol. I mean, this is, a big deal. I mean, it is, you know, something that was pretty interesting and unique. I mean, there's a lot of detail about, we don't have the cherubim that we kind of, right? They could have said, oh, the cherubim, we're going to, put those in all the synagogues and we'll make that a big symbol. But that's, for whatever reason, and we can guess what that might be. But this was the one possibly related to light that seems to have captured our imagination and stayed an important symbol in Judaism. So let's look at what some of the commentators had to say. Okay, here, I don't think we read this, but it's all of this once again is a single hammered piece of gold. So imagine what Neil just held up that started as a big block of gold. They got carved out and hammered into that elaborate piece. So, could someone please read what Rashi had to say about this idea of the lampstand of pure gold, of hammered work?
of beaten work shall Helen candelabrum be made, i.e., one should not make it of separate pieces, nor shall one make its branches or its lamps as a separate limb. A kind of work called soudure in Old French, English to solder, but it was to make in its entirety of a single mass of gold. He who made it beat it with a hammer and cut away with the implements of his crafts, thus making the branches spread out in this direction and in that.
Right. So
Hard.
what's
So
that?
does that make it less likely to break the branches off? If they're hammered from one piece, are they less likely to break off rather than be screwed on? I'm just trying to come up with some reason for it having to be hammered. Does it make it less, or then it's soldered maybe? But it's supposed to be made of one mass, a single mass. So
It's
I'm
more durable for one thing. Like gold leaf is very, very delicate. Molded gold, because it's gold, is still very soft. But if you're hammering the gold, it stays together for much longer. I don't know if that's useful.
I'm trying to think of a metaphorical reason, and about the best I can come up with is that it's one source of light. It's not brought together from constituent parts, but kind of I don't know, the energy, the light can emanate from a single thing, much as God is one. And I have no idea if this has any validity, but it feels like it's worth exploring a little bit.
I like that.
Yeah.
And if
think
you
it
did
has
that, it
validity
could
because you said it. I mean, it's an interesting idea. It is a unity, and it's interesting. You might say, well, something that's molded is unified. It's a single piece, but that's out. Here, the soldering is out as well. So that soldering is not molding. But here, this is a singular work. It's almost like this is going to be the cornerstone symbol of the in the Mishkan.
I'm thinking a little bit of sculptors who would say that they found a piece of marble and they knew that there was this figure that they're sculpting was there, and they're just chipping away the excess.
Yeah. Yeah.
Very Michelangelo.
yeah.
Yes. Okay, so this Rashi has another comment on this, which I think is pretty similar, so we can move past that. Okay. So let's see what Sforno, he was a 17th century commentator in Italy. What did he have to say?
I'll go.
Thanks,
The,
Mike.
the Torah arranged the subject of the menorah as something that it totally integrated, i.e., just as the menorah was to be constructed of a single chunk of gold, not as a composite structure, so the 7 lights were also to be arranged in such a way that the light from the lamps would converge in one above the light burning on top of the central shaft. Inasmuch as the light symbolized spiritual enlightenment, the lesson is that in all our efforts at obtaining such enlightenment and during all the digressions that the pursuit of such disciplines necessarily entails, we must never lose sight of the direction in which we are striving and keep this central idea of such enlightenment resulting in us becoming better servants of the Lord, constantly in front of our mental eye.
Okay, let's pause there. Okay, so he's bringing a lot out here. What are some of the things that you notice? What are some of the ideas that Sforno is drawing from the symbolism here?
But we have enlightenment and light as a parallel here.
Yeah, he's
Brings up
bringing in this whole idea of light, and we touched on it a little bit, but the whole purpose of this structure was to shine light. It was a lampstand. This was something that was lit, so to speak, as the kids would say today. The menorah was lit, man. So,
seems to be pushing pretty hard, excuse me, on unity and focus.
yeah,
And keeping something, within line of sight, keeping it visible to you, which is, I mean, to me, I think that's part of the reason for the tabernacle in the first place, right? Is like the people need something visible and tangible.
yeah, yeah. And next week we'll get to next week or in 2 weeks we get to the golden calf, and that was maybe part of the issue is this abstract God was just too much. It was too big a jump, so they needed to have something as a focus of worship.
And all the other religions had these wonderful temples, so that was part of their society, just as today we have these wonderful.
Yeah. They have the temples and they have the idols.
Yes.
Yeah.
And this is, I think some of us were alluding earlier to the fact that if you need something in sight, and we're not supposed to have idols, what do you have?
And so it's kind of interesting.
Focus your attention on, to focus the concept of this unimaginable, greater than my mind can conceive, deity. how do you keep that concept in the forefront and not have a physical object to focus on?
It's a very tricky part of making Jewish art that can be extremely frustrating. Of
Mm.
how do I show this and how do I symbolize this and how does it not go anywhere near idolatry?
Okay, so your talk has made me think about something. When Ellen said, well, what do you have? And we saw earlier this idea that maybe the creation of the Mishkan was a symbolic reenactment of creation. And what was the first part of the creation story?
Yes.
Well,
So
the first thing was light.
Yes, light was the first
Fine.
thing that was created. And then here is, you know, maybe this was from the first day of creation, the light that always burns, that never goes out. Um, let's Marty, could you read this last paragraph here?
This is the symbolism contained in the words. Do I have to read that?
No.
Zo Maaseh. Emanating from this menorah, their function is singular, one of unification, just as the menorah from which they emanate was cast out of a single chunk of gold, something unified.
Yeah, so a lot of the ideas that we've talked about and that you brought up, I see kind of, were considered by Sforno, who thought about this stuff as his day job, hundreds of years ago, and one of the better known commentators. The idea of unity, light, focusing all of our efforts. That's an idea. I mean, what's the difference between if we're just kind of doing stuff as opposed to sort of focusing all of our efforts in a single direction?
I'm sorry, the sound cut out. Could you repeat your question?
Yeah, my question was, um, he talks about all our efforts in maintaining enlightenment, all of the light from the different branches should all focus on the same place. And so, what's the difference maybe in your life between having your light spread out in all kinds of different directions as opposed to having all of your light focused in a single direction?
I'm not as efficient when I'm multitasking for sure.
Hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, it makes me think about, if you have a certain amount of light and you spread it out, it becomes dimmer.
Hmm.
There's the idea, excuse me, there's chaos in the universe. And if one of us is behaving chaotically, it's probably not a tremendously big deal. If if everybody is behaving chaotically, not much going for a community.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. There's something to be said for unity of effort, and you don't want to get, there's too much of a good thing, but certainly here in the spiritual realm, they're really making the case again that this was, we want to get out of the mass-produced molten gods, where you spread out your spirituality to all these different gods, where it should be all focused in a single direction. Okay. This I I don't think there's a lot here for this Or Chaim that I want to get into, but he's making an argument you could make your lampstand out of inferior materials. Um, uh, I think that was meant really for their modern audience that, like, okay, well, if you want to make your own menorah, you don't have to make it of gold because, other materials are okay. Now we get a pretty detailed Rabbeinu Bachya. He's a mystic, very deep interpreter of Torah. So he kind of looks at the menorah on several different levels. And first we have the plain meaning of the text. So could someone start reading this?
According to the plain meaning of the text, you are to construct a golden lampshade. The purpose of the menorah in both the tabernacle and the temple was to establish the lofty meaning of the temple in the minds of people and their souls. They should forever display reverence for what the temple stood for, just as the Torah wrote, Leviticus, and you shall be in awe of my sanctuaries. This is why the lampshade had to be positioned outside the dividing curtain and not beyond it like the ark. This is why the Torah emphasizes this with the words, and I'm not reading the Hebrew, outside the dividing curtain within the tent of testimony, he shall position it, etc. It should be possible to be viewed by everyone who entered the tabernacle and who left it. This is also why it was constructed out of gold, the most precious of all metals.
Thank you, Ellen. Okay, so there's a lot of detail here, but what's the bottom line? Why did they make this big um, golden menorah?
Because it's cool.
Because
It's
people
cool.
see it
Yeah,
to tempt the Romans into thievery and destruction. Sorry.
perhaps. Um,
I just can't get over that selfie on the Arch of Titus.
What?
we'll get to that. I actually have a picture of that where we're
Okay, cool.
yeah. So yeah, but this is like a big deal. This is like the Washington Monument, the Lincoln Memorial. I mean, this was something which we should all kind of have in our heads, and it should be in the minds of the people and their souls, and they should forever display reverence. So as symbols go, now granted, he was writing this in the Middle Ages, so it had already been around for a while, but nonetheless, we're still, hundreds, almost 1,000 years later, and it's still a major symbol of the Jewish people. So I think, he did a pretty good job of putting this together. Um, and they say it should be put in plain view. This is not a hidden symbol. Like the cherubim, they were behind the curtain. Only the high priest would ever see this. This was for everybody to see. This was like, the Hollywood, the three lights for the grand premiere up in the sky. Um, and then he says something interesting. It is known that the soul itself benefits when the lights are lit, and it derives pleasure and joy from the sight. And then once the soul is in a joyous state, its joy spreads, seeing the soul itself, et cetera, et cetera. So what's the impact of light on a human being, according to Rabbi Bachia? And do you agree?
Well, light lifts the soul and the emotions.
Yeah.
Darkness is depressing, and light is uplifting.
Mm-hmm.
I was thinking of our seasonal affective disorder when we don't get enough naturally.
Yeah, absolutely.
I was thinking of sparkly Christmas lights. Which makes me feel bad, but yeah.
Well, it's a symbol that we're all familiar with, and it is,
Cheerful.
used for joyous festive occasions. Oh my God, my mother loved her Christmas decorations and used to just go, even when she lived in like really small apartments toward the end of her life, like the whole place was just overrun with lights around that season. So
I like in the
And
UK,
every culture has something for that season.
yeah.
they call them fairy lights in the UK. So if you don't want to call them Christmas lights, you can call them fairy lights.
Whenever I say that, Americans look at me with confusion. So that's
Well, the other thing is we have so many expressions and metaphors to illuminate, luminary. It's anything that we see value in or we see a deeper understanding. There's a metaphor with light in it.
Yeah, and he gets into that here as well. That's a great point, Neil. Like light and intelligence, and also spirituality. He quotes the book of Proverbs, um, which says the soul is the light of the divine. So it's a very powerful metaphor for learning. Um, so yeah, so having a big giant thing which casts light, I don't know, like if you ever see like the big Chabad or my old synagogue had, a 6 foot tall Hanukkah menorah, which they would light with, these big things. I mean, it's impressive. It looks cool. So now he gets into kind of a midrashic approach. So it's kind of weaving a story around this. Maybe have someone to read the midrashic approach that Rabbi Bachya shares.
The 7 lamps on the menorah were burning around the clock by day and by night, just as the 7 fixed stars supply their light by day and by night without interruption. The middle lamp represented the sun, which is light, and the center of the 7 fixed stars. I assume they're referring to the planets and the idea that
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it's got some celestial objects, probably the planets. I didn't look that up, but clearly,
do you know like what century that would be? Roughly?
so Midrash is kind of 2nd century approximately.
Okay.
That's kind of when it was written. Some of them orally may have been around hundreds of years before that.
the menorah with 7 lamps is an allusion to the Torah, which is generally known as or, light. This is confirmed by the verse in Proverbs.
Right. So the light of the soul. So, or does anyone know for the morning prayers, we say a blessing, for light or for the divine, the creation of the lights. So again, light is an important symbol. What about the number 7? Was that in my next one?
Isn't that completion? Like 7 days in this?
Yeah. Yeah, it's wholeness, it's completion. That's also an important symbol. All right, so we're almost out of time. So just a couple of interesting historical artifacts. Josephus, who had a Hebrew name, but Flavius Josephus, he was a Jewish Roman historian, and he wrote about the sack of Jerusalem and the temple. And he made reference to all of this plunder that was taken. And he makes reference to the candlestick, which was made of gold. It's different than the way we make them today. Small branches came out of it at great length. And everyone had a pocket made of brass for a lamp at the tops. And these lamps were in number 7 and represented the dignity of the number 7 among the Jews. And then, there's this big procession of Vespasian, who was the general, and Titus followed him. Well, this is what Annie was talking about earlier, and I have seen this. I couldn't find my own picture, but it's the Arch of Titus. It was constructed a few years after the destruction of the temple and the conquest of Jerusalem. It's kind of his victory arch. And there is an image of the people carrying out this giant gold lampstand. which it's also a source of much kind of speculation. Is this hidden in the bowels of the Vatican somewhere?
Mhm.
Or was it just melted down and used as coins? But that's kind of what we have. That's kind of what we have for our Torah study today. Any closing thoughts or comments?
Thank you for taking a bit of Torah that seems sort of odd and pulling a lot out of it.
Making it relevant for us. Appreciate it.
Yeah, it could be a curiosity of, oh yeah, oh, and we have our eternal light from the menorah, and we have, but there's some depth to that as well. And I particularly liked kind of our discussion of kind of the all of the light pointing in the same place and that being part of its original design, which um, when they were writing that, I mean, I don't think that level of detail is in the Torah, but it certainly makes sense. You could interpret it that way. It certainly was meant to be brilliant and something that everyone could see. But for those philosophers, for those sages, that was something that was important to them, was to, that we bring focus, that we bring our light, into a single place at a time. And that can be really useful unless you, again, make too much of it. And if your focus is actually not in sync with what people need, or you're missing out on too much of the world. But anyway, thank you all so much for being here. And if you are watching this video, please give it a like or a share or subscribe to the channel so that the YouTube and other social media algorithms show this to other people, and they'll probably like it too. Thanks so much. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you. That was fun.